G'day everyone, welcome to a brand new week of TTR. This is the UK session, of course. What is TTR, I hear you say? It's called Trader Talk Radio, and we're doing it for Actions to Wealth, as you can see on my screen there. And we do it Monday through Thursday at this time of day for about an hour and a half, depending on what's going on around the place and around the traps in terms of trading. Hopefully we can shed some light on a little bit of stuff that's going on around the place and make your trading week just that little bit more interesting, if not profitable and tradable. Where am I going to start? Let's start with what's happening today in terms of news events. Well, the big news, of course, is that it's a US bank holiday. And as such, never a great fan of trading on a US bank holiday. Because there goes a fair portion of the market out straight away with no US people working today, traders that is, unless of course they're retail traders sitting at home watching the markets. But that doesn't tend to move the market as we would like it to be, and that is in some sort of uniform fashion. So that appears to be the only news of the day, and it actually is pretty light on week. If I look at the rest of it as well, not a whole lot of red news around about the place. A lot of people talking. Later in the week, we've got a little bit of news coming out from the Aussie, scattered throughout the week. In fact, it's probably a fairly decent Aussie week in terms of news events. A few releases of the minutes of the Reserve banks coming out through the week. Aussie tomorrow, Fed on Wednesday or overnight for most of us. And what else is going on around the place? As I said, a few speeches going on. In fact, a lot of speeches going on from heavyweights. A bit of sales coming out, sales figures coming out. Employment figures from the Aussie. But yeah, not a headline act, I wouldn't have thought. As you can see, the Fed members are having a big day on Friday. I think we're in a relatively news-free zone, as it were, and may be able to get a bit of technical trading going on throughout the week. Let's hope that's the case. Let me see. Well, from my point of view, anyway, a lot of people like to trade fundamentals, of course, and that's perfectly fine. Let me see what's going on. No real point looking at the past 24 hours, so let's narrow that one down to 6, maybe. And see what the day, pardon me, has brought so far. Green on screen for the most part. Dollar down against the Swissy and every other currency apart from the yen. So the yen continues to be weak against all currencies. That's interesting. Kiwi didn't have a great afternoon in terms of Asia session by the look of that, but everything else is ticking along nicely. So dollar's off a bit, apart from against the yen. So the yen's weakest, if you like, of the currencies I can see in that chart anyway. Let's take that into some perspective, shall we, as we look at charts. I'll start with the euro, I think, mainly because I spend most of my time on the euro. I think it's the most traded currency pair after all, so why not spend a bit of time there?
Hi, mate.
Hello, mate. Here's Ash.
Sorry about that.
What for? No, nothing to be sorry about, mate. All good. Better late than never, they reckon.
Yeah.
The grass and under it, all those sorts of things.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So,
what sort of weekend did you have?
Oh, pretty good actually. Yeah, very good. I have to say, it's been a really good weekend this weekend. Just lots of activities for the little one. But I guess it's one of those.
With me, mate. We went to the Kempton Festival. Not that that means anything to anybody.
Yeah.
Except probably if you live in southern Tasmania. But we were at sheepdog trials.
Oh, wow.
Races,
oh, wow.
Ferret races.
Oh, really? Oh,
All
that
sorts
sounds
of things
interesting.
going on.
Ferret races.
I should have put some pictures up for you. I might
I
do that
um
tonight.
sheepdogs trials always fascinate me because
Yeah,
I do think
amazing.
it's quite incredible. Um, and obviously
Well, they
because
were
of
actually
Babe.
rounding up geese, not sheep.
Oh, right, okay. Well, I suppose
Yeah,
they can.
our festivals in Tasmania have a little bit of a twist to them, you see.
Well, they I suppose those clever little beasts can round up what they like, can't they? They're pretty good
Absolutely.
at pretty good at everything.
Yep, you bet. So that's where I
Um,
spent my day yesterday. Saturday, I think I was slaving away in the nursery, mate. As a matter of fact.
oh, right, okay. So pretty active weekend, really.
Yep, out and about. Didn't spend much lounge time, unfortunately. I did catch a series called The Cry, Australian series. Interesting.
An Australian city. Oh, do you know what? Actually, thinking about it, do you know I've actually been doing quite a lot of work on analysing some shares that interest me over the weekend. And the only reason I remember that is because of the fact that you're sort of like talking about doing things that you maybe wouldn't normally do.
Yep.
This for this weekend, I actually sort of like was able to sit down and have a really good look through some stocks and not the balance sheets, interestingly, but the just some of the names. I just had a look at some of the names and what they do, maybe we'll talk about those throughout the week. I could bring you
Okay.
some. Wouldn't mind doing a little bit more tidying up on them, but. Yeah, there's some interesting things out there that I think might be of interest to you and maybe some of the other listeners as well. That's could be worth some further and deeper looks for
Sounds
investments.
cool, mate. Yeah.
And do you know what? Just to touch on one, which I thought that this
Yep.
one comment was quite interesting. I've been looking in the robotics arena sector because. I think that there's lots of opportunities, and I was looking, and I don't want to be too controversial, but I was looking in the sex bots area because some of the technology that they're coming up with is so advanced.
VI, absolutely.
Yes, and
VR, sorry, not
they've even
VR.
got a brothel. They've even got this sex bot brothel, which I think is pretty astonishing. But there's a lot of lonely people out there, and I think it's quite it could be quite an interesting industry. But actually, when I went digging a little bit deeper, the thing that really kind of stood out to me was that there was a big report done by JP Morgan, I think, about the fact that robots are going to take over like 50% of the jobs by 2030, something crazy like that.
Yep.
And in this report, they were saying it's not anything that we should fear as long as we own the companies that they are the robots in, because ultimately then the robots don't only work for the company that employ them, but they also work for you. And I thought, yeah, absolutely right. I quite like that. So I was it kind of led me somewhere else. Didn't lead me to where I thought it was going to lead me. It actually led me
Lateral
to
thinking, I like that.
yeah, kind of like factory workers rather
Yep.
than anything else. So yeah, could be of interest. Anyway, I've just
The rise
realised
of
I've
the
got no
machines, mate.
the
That's
rise of
where I'm
well, I
at.
mean it is concerning if we kind of look at it through Terminator eyes, which I'm sure we will do at some point. Sorry, I just realised that I didn't have my screen up, so I've just put my screen up. I guess was there anything specific that you were looking at today? Have you done any work on the euro or anything else today yet?
Oh, look, I have a little bit, not a whole lot, because it is US bank holiday. We've got it's President's Day over there, and of course Donald's been playing golf all weekend. The Chinese trade talks ended. When was that ended last week? No deals. So we went and played golf all weekend.
Yeah, I quite like the
And that's
sound of that.
Sorry.
Now, on this particular occasion, you are much more informed than I am. Tell me about the Chinese trade deal.
Well, nothing happened. No deals. So they've just gone on to, I think they now meet again in the States, maybe this March 1st, I think. Or is it this week? Might be this. Oh no, March 1st is the deadline, isn't it?
Okay.
They've got to have their deal done by March 1st. I don't know what happens. I don't know what the end game is. If they don't, maybe this all deals are off the table, I guess. But the latest I've heard on that subject is that the rhetoric around the hard stance that the US are taking continues to be the chat or the chit chat, if you like, and that seems to be the main theme, and that's why we're not getting any deals. It looks like the
Okay.
US are playing hardball and no deals. So here we are.
Well, I like that. I like that because obviously I've got this going on. I'm in a trade with the FTSE, and I'm kind of waiting for it to come down a little bit. So I do, yeah. I like the fact that there's some trade wars going on. I wasn't aware of them, stranger. I don't know why I missed it. But I have missed it.
Well, I don't think it's an event. I think it was just that they finished their talks and no deal was done. So onward they move.
Well, I suppose some of the move to the upside has been down to potential trade wars being sorted out. So if this continues to go, that's absolutely fine. I don't know whether I've got a high here or not. The tricky thing is that the market kind of pushed through certain levels for me, and I am obviously hanging on, but it's actually pushed through this level, just kind of like started to edge forward. But there is another level up here which we haven't quite touched, but well, in actual fact, maybe we have. If we take this lower line here, there's probably just enough of a touch to suggest that it could start coming down from this point. But I'm still bearish the market, so I'm quite happy to hold on and see how it plays out. One thing that I am comfortable with, I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but one thing I'm pretty comfortable with is that I've got a decent point that would bounce minimum. So even if the market did continue to move forward, let's say it opens up and it continues to move forward, I'm not going to sell this. I'm not going to buy this one back because it's going to be unlikely for it just to keep going and going and going and going and going and going. It could happen, but it's unlikely. You know, there's a huge chance that if we don't test this level down here, which I was after before, that we test this level. But if we don't test that level, we should test that level. And if we don't test that level, then we'll probably test this level. So somewhere along the line, I'm pretty comfortable that I've got a decent price for a sell. I didn't sell here. I did sell here actually, but I took profit when it came down, and it was a good choice in the end. But I've got a better price now, and I'm quite happy to hang on here. So I don't really none of this price action currently really makes me concerned. If I've got to consider where the hedge is going to be, that's the one thing for me. Is that if this pushes forward into this area, then I would probably be selling it again, but maybe not till here. So I'll probably sell it here if it gets all the way to that point, and then if it doesn't fall down, then I'll probably have to hedge just above this level here. So you know, I've got a it's a vague plan at the minute because this is a long way. You know, for me to get from this point to this point is 250 pips. It's got a long way to go before it gets up there. So before that time, I am looking for something deeper than what I have now. I'm not looking for it just to come back so I can close the trade. I'm looking for this one to start to turn around now, and at least give me from this point here to this point here, maybe even this point here. So yeah, I've got a few things to watch out for, mate. But looks like I'm waiting, and the fact that you're telling me about no resolution for trade wars, that does fill me with some joy and some hope.
Mate, I'm always glad to bring you some joy and hope.
Yes,
especially on a Monday.
I see the pound also got a pretty good boost on Friday.
Yeah, didn't it? What? Took off, got no idea what that was about, didn't read about it. So if you've got any info on that, that's probably going to be news to me, but no surprise that we've gone pretty much to the top of the channel that we had in place, or that I had in place, and at a significant level on the monthly pivot where it's hit and now stalling.
Yes, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It was no major surprise. The big thing from the pound on Friday was retail sales, which came in at 1% after a forecast at 0.2%. So much. Yeah, it was a much better number and a much more positive after the pretty poor data that we had been getting. It also strengthened against the euro off the monthly pivot. So yeah, lots to like, I think, about the pound today.
Except that it is at the monthly pivot and might be a little bit tough to be going long at this point without a pullback.
Yes, pound dollar is at the monthly. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
So you want me to take a look at some currency charts?
Yes, let's do that, mate. Yeah, let's do that. I'll be interested to get your view on euro pound as well.
Yeah, well, I had a good thought process going there last week on euro pound. Didn't quite work out, but let's take a look. So I'll start with the pound then. I was going to start with the euro, but let's start with the pound. And that's the reason why I think it's going to be a little bit tough to trade this long today. There's a whole lot going on here. We've got a trend line. We've got the top of a channel. We've got the monthly pivot. We've got an untested set of pivots sitting down here below us, which tend to be magnetic towards price. And we've got a US bank holiday. I'm really, really thinking that I don't want to be trading long here at this point without a reasonable retracement or pullback of some kind. But that said, I said that here, and finally we've got one, and now I can't trade it because, well, a few reasons. The bar's too big to jump in here, that's for sure. And now I really want to see it back down here again. So it's been a little bit of a disappointment for me, this cross in the last little bit. Let's call that a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It's a month. It's a whole month since I've been disappointed, been unable to get into the big moves here. I tried here to get into this and got a little bit out of it, but unfortunately the trailing stop was a little bit too tight, and we got taken out of that with just a little bit better than break even. I don't see anything here for me right now. I don't want to trade it down to the bottom, but it seems the likely prospect for me today, if the US was open and it's not, I'd be fairly confident of finding a pullback here of some kind. Am I going to trade it today? Look, as always, if it sets up, then I will most certainly do that. But at this point in time, you know, it's tempting just to put a stop maybe up here and go short at this point, targeting the pivots. But at this really US bank holiday day, I'm not reluctant. I am reluctant to do that as well. Just hang on 2 seconds.
Tell you what, your line as well gives us a lovely right potential left shoulder there. That red line, it's dipped poetically. Look at that left shoulder and head formed. Yeah, that looks fantastic, and what a good point that you know we get a right shoulder formation in that line, which is obviously a significant level of support, then resistance, then support at some point. Going back historically, that looks like a fantastic area to look for a trade.
Yeah, look, the temptation was just to place that trade that I spoke of and let it drift down to here and then wait for that to happen. I just don't know. I think the level is probably a little bit higher, not necessarily the monthly pivot, because they'll try and get through here again. They've been through it once. I think they'll try and get through it again. But here's the area, I think, for me, around about the 129.35 mark, that may turn around and form that right shoulder. We'll see. A little bit tricky, and that's what I'm saying. Euro then. Let's talk about that. And if we put both of these together, we'll probably come up with something on euro pound. Daily chart on the euro is a little bit on the okay, we're in consolidation mode side. But that said, we have put this big bar on Friday is obviously the pound drew the euro with it. I don't know why the euro rallied, but it certainly did. Interesting that we had a very good look. And when I saw this candle here on Wednesday, I think it was, I thought, oh, we're in a bit of strife here. We're going to test this low. Well, we kind of had a go, but it didn't make it. And that's when we got that very big retracement, very, very noticeable retracement. And that really does look like a potential reversal bar. There's no question there. The level's interesting. We've tried to take out these two lows, and really you'd have to call it a fail. Well, I believe you'd have to call it a fail. But that candle there on Wednesday, as I said, looked very, very bearish for the euro, but it's fought back, showing its resilience, as it often does. You know, it just seems to be gone, and then, whoop, back we come. So we're back inside this range, and today will be very, very interesting. Again, with the US bank holiday, I'm not sure we're going to move too far. And again, we are at a resistance level, pardon me, on the euro. If I go and dig a little bit deeper, you can see this resistance that we found already, and this is weak resistance here in DR1. I expect that level of resistance is probably there, apart from the fact that we've got a trend line. I would expect that to be the case today. My hope is that we actually do go through there and find that level, consolidate there for a little bit, then duck back underneath, and I can look to trade it down to the pivots. That's as far as I want to trade it, however, because we are back inside this range. And yeah, that's interesting, Ash. We are back inside this range, and all I'm really looking for here is a higher low to trade it long. So this may be a case of short to go long if it sets up.
So we're long the euro today, are we?
Look, I don't think so. I don't think we're going to get the opportunity. I think if we are to go long, we're going to find resistance. And if we find resistance, I'd be happy to trade it back to the pivots. It may go to the pivots first, in which case then I may change my mind and look to trade it long. So really what I'm looking for is on a substantial time frame, let's call it 4 hours minimum. I want to see a higher low here. That's what I want to see. And if I see that higher low, that gets me long. Why? Well, again, because we're back inside this range, and we've really refused to go through this low that I spoke of earlier, which is the lowest low on the chart. And we didn't want to know about it. So really these lows are holding, which is pretty much where price is. The pink line is. It's really held there. And if we do get back above this trend line, then I'll certainly be looking for those longs. And that should coincide, if you like, with a higher low up here. So if I can get long here, we can at least target this trend line, the one you just saw on the bigger chart. We can at least target that. It's in a confluence area with the monthly pivot. I think this is a good trade if we actually get the setup. So best case scenario here for mine is, wish I had a pen. Wonderful, this will work. The best case scenario here is today for this level to be taken out. So 113.40 to be taken out. And one of two things happen next. Retest that white line, retest the trend line, which is at 113.25-ish in that vicinity. But certainly it's also a horizontal level of sorts, very soft one, but it's there. But better still, we come down to here and find the pivots, which is great support. Put in our higher low, and that allows us to trade long from there. So that's the best possible price, I believe, is in this area, around about the 112.75 to 112.80, 112.90. Any higher low or sign of a higher low there or reversal bar there, that really does get me interested in a long. But I'd like it to happen in that sequence, because I'd like this level to be taken out, back down to here, then bang. So that's what I'm looking for on the euro. So in terms of today, I really would find it difficult to go long the euro until we got down to here. Now, if we do, without any form of resistance being taken out, then I'd probably look to scale out here and look for another entry later on. So I don't really want to trade through that with full risk on the table. I think that level is just a bit too tough. Very similar to the pound. And I can't see a driver today that will break us out. I don't see a breakout driver. But, funny things happen when you've got a major bank holiday because it doesn't take that much in terms of a speculator, if you like.
Because of the lack of liquidity.
Yeah, because there ain't too much liquidity around the place. It could easily drive through a level. So it's really tough in terms of how much weight you want to put on these trades, or I want to put on these trades anyway. But, there's a few options here. There's an option to trade it back to the pivots if we get above here and find the resistance, or there's an option simply to go long from here, but scaling out fairly substantially at this level and waiting for a better entry. Put those together. Let's talk about euro pound. And as you can see, we're very, very rangy, have been for the longest time, back into 2017, really. Put in this big double top, but it didn't really produce too much. Then we put in a series of lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, then higher lows, and blah, blah, blah. Then so on went the orchestra. And really, it does look a little bit like a musical chart there. Where are we now? Well, interestingly, similar to what I've just described on the euro, we failed to take out the lowest low of this range. We tried, but we bounced straight back off that level. We've since hit the monthly pivot twice. I'll just zoom in just a little bit. So we've come off the monthly pivot on the first day of the month, and we've come off the monthly pivot again here. When was that? Last week? What chart am I on? Week? Yep. Last week we've come off the monthly pivot again. Not just come off it. I mean, we've rocketed off it, or waterfalled off it, if you like. They're substantial candles. They're really saying something. In a past life, I'm just putting a short in here.
Yeah.
And a stop here.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why I'm not doing that, frankly.
Yeah.
Because that's a really big signal. I think
It's
I'm just
huge,
waiting.
isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. I think I'm just waiting for a better candle. Although, will I get one is the question. I don't know. And again, I go back to the liquidity question today. Why did the gap close? We gap down, gap close instantly after this, extremely bearish move. And again, I've got a couple of pivots here that are untested. I just kind of think it's not the right time to play that. Although if I go to those pivots, let's put that back into context and go back to the daily chart. Sorry, what chart was on? Weekly chart. If I go back to the weekly chart, here are the pivots here. So even if we did place that order, our stops are pretty safe, I believe, because the pivots are protecting us. So, any rally here, I'm talking myself into this, Ash. Any rally here doesn't give us too much grief, I wouldn't have thought. How's the horizontal level? About that yellow line. There's the pivots there. So you can see this level's got plenty of form through here. Wow. Okay. Look, I'm going to dig deeper and find a better entry. I think I'm going to look for a better entry anyway. But gee, I'm really tempted just to play that weekly chart.
Yeah, I mean, I I have to say I am with you on it. I think it's one of those, isn't it, that actually because of the information off the weekly chart, we can in a way start to mine in a little bit and see if there's a decent entry on the daily. I mean, maybe the stops still go in the same place, but maybe to get
just sneak a better entry in.
Yeah, where that weekly pivot is.
That's the area I've got in my mind.
Yeah.
And when I see the daily and the weekly pivot sandwiched together like that, I find it very difficult to trade away from it.
Oh, really? But, so you don't think that would be a really obvious place of resistance there?
No, I certainly do. But right now, I couldn't trade away from that now until we test it. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
So I think that's probably a great place to look for a trade. Let's see if we can get some confluence in that area. Not quite. Let's try the daily chart. It kind of gives it to us. Yeah, it's not too dusty. Let's just tighten it up a bit.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's actually, what's that? I've got one, mate.
You got one?
Yes.
That one's not too bad either. What do you got?
Let me quickly show you. Might make it eat. Oh, actually, you've got it as well. Yeah, you got it as well. But my line doesn't actually show you what I've got. My line doesn't actually.
You're coming down from here, are you?
Let's see what you're looking at.
Be the same thing. You're coming down from there.
No, actually, no. I've come down from here. I'll show you what I've got. Let's bring this on the day on a hourly with pivots. Looking at this on a 4-hour. Literally just this one here.
Yeah, that's very similar to the first one I had. Yep.
Yeah. Which I quite like because it looks like the end of the that looks like the end of the run to the upside. So it looks like, you know, that does kind of seems to change the phase a little bit. This area is going to be slightly problematic. I wonder whether we do actually get a reversal pattern as well with a left shoulder head, right shoulder. I wouldn't look for that because it looks a bit ambitious, but that does look like there's some confluence there.
Do we want to trade this? Are we convinced that the euro is going to be weaker than the pound?
I have to say I'm pretty bearish when it comes down to the euro. I don't like the fundamentals of the euro. I don't like the fact that Germany, narrowly missed a recession. I don't like the fact that you've got these problems in Italy. I don't like the fact that we got the European elections just around the corner with still issues with Brexit. I don't like Brexit. So I am bearish the euro. Obviously, the pound does come into play when we talk about Brexit as well, but I think the euro is potentially a fairly weak looking chart for me. Fairly weak looking currency right now.
Yeah. From a technical point of view, I absolutely understand the fundamental point of view. Technical point of view, it just doesn't want to go lower. Well, it doesn't seem to want to go through this.
No, it's held on, isn't it? I mean, considering all the issues, it has held on, which sometimes can give an indication in itself. But
then holding patterns are generally followed up by continuation of the previous trend as well. So it's not an easy ask for me, I don't think. Interestingly, I don't know if you can shed any light on this. I saw on my local news not long ago, in fact only an hour ago, that Brexit has brought it's probably a bad term to use, brought an airline down in the
That's
UK.
right. Flybe, yeah.
What's it called?
Flybe.
Are they substantial or?
They're not substantial, but I think the fact the fact that it's happened is substantial. And you know that the rhetoric about Brexit from some of the Remainers, Mark Carney and at the time George Osborne and probably David Cameron, all said that there would be Armageddon, you know, just with a Brexit vote, and that didn't really come to fruition. So, you know, if they were a little bit less Project Fear at the time, and they were a bit more pragmatic and said over time that we are going to see weakness in the economy because of Brexit, then this would have been something that they could have used. But they really did go with the fear aspect of Brexit. They went in too hard at the time, and the British people, as soon as the numbers came out and they weren't weaker, it didn't really help their cause or their argument, and they're kind of probably seeing the fruits of that Project Fear really come and bite them, even with something like Flybe going under. But I think inevitably it was going to happen around about this time, because the reason these companies are going under, and the reason the problem with just after the Brexit vote is that there was still 2 years before Article 50 was going to be triggered. So, sorry, not Article 50 was going to be seen out, you know. And with that, it meant the business had a bit of time to prepare about what was going to happen. But ultimately, what's started to happen now is that business cannot hang on any longer. So while investment is shrinking, this is when we start to see the result of the referendum starting to come into play, you know, because business just doesn't feel comfortable anymore continuing to come into the UK and continue to put money into the UK. So they probably should have been a little bit more pragmatic, as I say, and say, you know, towards the because it's as a negotiation gets closer and the confusion is still wry, then that is why that they can't now go, okay, don't worry, let's just continue as things were. But when it first happened, of course they could continue as things were, because there was no, you know, at the particular time of the vote, they had 2 years. So so now we're starting to probably see more so the effects of Brexit. And I think Flybe is just one example, because Jaguar Land Rover has had a cut. We seem to have a lot of these Brexiteers leaving the country to go and find safe haven somewhere else. Dyson being one of them, potentially going to start a company up in Singapore, or put the arm of his company over in Singapore. And there was another one. Yeah, there was another one I was reading about as well. Who was it? I can't remember, but it was. I think it was the richest guy in the UK, but I can't remember what industry he's in. And he also did the same thing, or he's also looking to do the same thing, where he's moving some of his business away from the UK and maybe even going into Ireland. So there's issues. There's certainly issues now that you know maybe weren't so prevalent before. But with a vote as close as with a result as close as it is, I don't think businesses are willing to hang on any longer. But you only have to walk around London to recognise that there's no reason, there's no question that people want to stay. There's no question that business wants to stay, because London's just it's a great place to do business. It's very open, and the economy is very supportive of business, and it's all in one place. You know, that the city of London is such a vibrant place to do work. And if you compare it to places like Paris, or some German city of equivalent, then you don't really have it, because some of these other countries, maybe less so France, but certainly Germany, Germany's a lot more balanced. They have a much more balanced economy throughout their country, whereas in the UK, it's very, very London centric. So these companies that's managed to set up in London have really got everything that they need. So I think that, you know, London will survive if there is a hard Brexit, but you know, it really could do without it. You know, I think London will continue to be invested in, but it could really do without it, because, you know, it's set up. London's beautifully and perfectly set up for this the financial businesses, but they do need to get their act together if they are to continue to have outward investment. Because I think new business is probably where the problem is more going to lie, and new money and new investment from the businesses that they've got is going to be the issue. I think what will probably happen if it did end up as a hard Brexit is that these companies will probably remain having a base in the UK, but probably look at some other countries to make it easier for them to filter some of their business into the EU, because they need it. You know, everybody knows that they need it, and Flybe have really been a result of that.
You're not really filling me with confidence in the pound, mate. I've got to say.
No, I mean, I suppose that there's still expectation that they will do the right thing. I guess. I mean. The reports keep coming out over here. You know, the last thing we had was that that Theresa May was potentially going to delay Article 50 if her vote doesn't get through. So I think people quite like the sound of that. And it's sort of like it's sounding a little bit softer, but you could literally flip a coin from day to day and find good Brexit news and then bad Brexit news, and that's the issue. There's just nothing consistent out there that we can really hang our hat on. So it's difficult to have confidence with the pound, but I suppose it's one of those things that as a trader, if we know that if we can get in and we can get a decent enough price, then if they do sort this out, then the pound is unlikely to kind of come back and give us another opportunity. So that's why people want to get in. That's why people are just so keen just to enter this and then hope for the best effectively.
Gee whiz. I want a bit more than that. Hope for the best.
Yeah.
Way to trade, to be fair.
No, you're absolutely right, and I suppose it's one of those that you kind of you don't really want to hold your breath, and the question is, can you make yourself safe enough? Can you get into the trade and put a stop safe enough away that it won't get hit on a spike,
yeah, that's right.
but also not so wide that it doesn't really matter where it goes, you're not going to make money out of it. And this is why I quite like your weekly chart there, because there's a chance that could be the answer.
Yeah, look, I'm happy with that. I keep going back to it because it's so vivid, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely, it is. Yeah, it's a difficult one to ignore. And actually, if you look at that same or a similar bar on the pound euro, there's also something which would suggest that the pound would strengthen against the euro for the week as well. So maybe looking for opportunities on that one could be the
which cross, mate?
Oh, it was the euro you were looking at, was it?
Firstly, it was the euro pound.
Yes, the euro pound was the one with that bar.
These bars here, these two bars, yeah.
Yes. So if you then look on, sorry, let me come back to. Yes. So then now if we let me go back to my screen here a second. If we now go back to the pound dollar, that was what I was really thinking. If we now go to the pound dollar, I'm going to clean this up and bring in the weekly chart. We kind of have something that does suggest also that there could be a hold on this bar as well, and coming down to that right shoulder area. That's what I was looking at before, left shoulder, and maybe it comes up, gives us a neckline, and then a right shoulder. This looks like a pretty good hold as well. So this daily bar looks like a decent looking engulfing bar as well. So there's a lot of strength in this area. And it's a similar kind of thing. If we were to look at the weekly bar as a potential point for entry with an entry at the high and a stop at the low, yet when we can mine into this one, it's a lot cleaner where we can enter, and the entry does give us that right shoulder down here. That's what I'd look at for for a potential entry. So if that was to give us that right shoulder and come into that area, then we could be looking for a bounce. So if we consider that particular point back on the weekly chart again, that almost, it's not quite, but it's almost last week's open.
Yep. If I'm absolutely frank with myself, this is exactly what I've been looking for since we got that double bottom. And what chart are you on now?
This is the pound dollar on the 4 hour.
4 hour, yeah.
Yeah.
If you look at the weekly chart, then that double bottom that we put in on, what was it, 30th, end of the year anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, it was the second last day of the year with that big spinning top.
You're talking about the daily chart? Oh, this one here?
No, I'm speaking about the weekly chart. But same
the
thing.
weekly?
Exactly.
Yep.
It's the same formation.
Yep.
And since that time, I've been looking for a decent pullback. Maybe this is it.
Yes, maybe it is. You're right.
Maybe this is actually, wow, I might have to trade the weekly chart today.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
It's only 200 pips.
Yeah, it's not that wide. When you sort of like think that that's a weekly chart we're looking at, 200 pips isn't that huge?
No, and I think euro pound is even less, if my memory serves me correctly.
And the
yeah, 120 pips.
The way that I would look at it as well is how does it compare to a general bar? You know, when it comes, yeah, actually that does look good, doesn't it? The good thing about the euro is that not only is it also involved in a lot of the problems, but also it has been weak. You know, the euro against the pound has been weak. It has been given us this this move to the downside, and it's you know, pretty much come up and tested an area of resistance and rejected it fairly significantly.
Yeah, it looks like a classic retracement, doesn't it?
It does. It certainly does. Yeah, yeah. So that does look good. Euro pound looks like a really good trade, and it's one of those that, you know, if we don't take the euro pound, then we probably look back on this and regret the fact that we didn't get in at this point when it's all the way down here.
Yep. Look, it may well be the same trade, pound US dollar, euro pound, but I think I'm willing to take both of them.
Oh yeah, just split the risk.
Split the risk. Yeah.
How does the pound compare across the board? Let's have a look. Spinning top against the Swissy, against the Aussie. Actually weakened at the end of last week, which is interesting.
Well, again, I've got a triple bottom. I'm looking at pound Aussie on the hourly chart. I've got a triple bottom and two higher lows off a daily pivot. Wow. I've got some interesting chart patterns here.
Yeah.
Too many crosses, Ash. Too many bloody crosses.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we're just considering the pound, I think I quite like what you were just saying about the euro, the pound euro, and maybe there's something with the dollar. I think the only problem with the dollar is that if the Fed all of a sudden kind of like, you know, return to their hawkish stance, then that's not going to help things out with the pound, obviously. But we know that the Draghi will not be moving this year. You know, it's going to be very, very hard for Draghi to be moving. So we won't have that factor in play at least. You know, he's probably going to remain fairly dovish. I would suspect.
Yeah, but it is his last term, so you know he's on the way out. Does he want to make a mark?
I think he probably would want to make a mark, but I don't think he could do it at the risk of of actually putting the whole eurozone economy in jeopardy, which it may well do. That may not be the mark that he's going to be able to leave.
Interestingly, we've now got more than one. In fact, we've got a few central bankers saying that they're not going north. They're thinking south again.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Which this is why
my...
this is one of those, isn't it? Because this is why I'm short the FTSE. I think that there are economic problems out there which far outweigh any technical move to the upside. I think we're just waiting for that little flick over the edge. I think we are looking probably a little bit too close to the edge of a cliff and looking over that precipice. And I don't think it's going to take much to start to shift this. And when I compare this to the pound, that's kind of the way I think about it as well. I feel that with a pound, if we just get that little bit of good news coming out from the pound, or some kind of hint that there's a deal being done, then I think that's the little bit of tip that it needs just to start to take off. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you're saying that about these central banks. It doesn't seem to me that that there's a lot of confidence out there for the markets generally. The question is there enough confidence that that the pound, if it could just get a little boost, could start to take off? And as yet, that just hasn't arisen. And then there's probably still people that are on both sides of the argument. There's those that are willing to take a punt down here because sterling is cheap, and there are those that are thinking we are not going to get a deal, so the pound still has some way to go before we get that turnaround.
It's interesting, to say the least. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Just back to that point about central banks. Well, what if the Fed, where are they now? 2.75? I think, from memory.
Yep. Yep.
If they're in the range, they always talk about a range anyway. It might be 2.25 to 2.5 or 2.5, 2.75. Can't remember. But it's not hard to find out. We're just going to have a look in a sec. And everyone else is going backwards. So if the US economy is going gangbusters, which it is for all intents and purposes, what does that say about the greenback? That says the greenback's just going to go nuts.
Well, certainly if the others do weaken, you're absolutely right. Because what ends up happening, and also if the stock market does start to weaken, genuinely starts to weaken, there's another thing about the dollar that promotes it, because it does become somewhat of a safe haven while interest rates are at a decent enough point to actually make some money. So it wouldn't surprise me.
Sorry to interrupt, but from a common sense point of view, they are still in so much debt. They still have overproduced the dollar in terms of physical dollars, yet they could come out of this smelling roses. I just don't understand that, and it doesn't make sense to me that can be actually physically possible, that the greenback strengthens on the back of a non-stop printing press. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I really need some clarity around that, because I can't get my head around it.
Well, I guess it depends on who it's up against, because a lot of them were doing that, weren't they?
Yeah, but not to the extent that the US machine just keeps on turning them out,
Yeah.
And every time there's signs of trouble, that's what they do. They just go straight back to that policy.
Yeah.
I mean, we've drained the swamp, and that's good. And I think that's when I say that's good, it's obviously good for the spirit of the US people, I think. that
Yeah.
there seems to be all of this swamp clearing going on. There
Yeah.
seems to be all of this money being spent, but where does the money come from? That always ask the question. And now he's talking about he's going to divest money or divert money from other budgetary. Not that they care about their budget, I don't think too much. It just doesn't matter. But he's going to divert because we've now got a state of emergency. Don't forget, he's declared
Yes.
that.
Yes.
He's now going to divert funds that would otherwise be spent on, let's say, health, let's say medical, let's say education, let's say infrastructure. That was previously, and I don't know. I'm probably speaking off the top of my head here, and I am speaking off the top of my head. I don't know where that money's coming from, but that money will be diverted from other budgetary areas to now build this, however many billions of dollars it's going to take to build this wall. That's his
Yeah.
plan anyway. You know,
Yeah.
and he just keeps on about it and on about it. And
Yeah.
okay, he can't get it through the Parliament or whatever they call those, Congress or whatever.
Yeah.
He can't get it through there. So now he goes to plan B, C, or D, whatever we're up to, I'm not sure. And we've got a state of emergency in America because Trumpy says we can't have these drugs and all these things coming into the state, into the country. So we've got to build a wall. But where does that money come from? Again, you know, the question is, where does that money come from? If the Mexicans aren't going to pay for it, and they never were, the question remains: who's going to pay for it? Where's it coming from?
Yeah.
You know, I just don't get. I don't get it. How the US dollar, and I know it's historic that it's been the go-to currency or the reserve currency, whatever you want to call it. Gee whiz, I don't see it as a safe haven. Really don't.
No, no. I mean, when I say safe haven, I guess just the fact that it would actually pay. You know, it's going to give investors some profits on the interest rate.
Yes,
and there's very few currencies that are doing that.
That absolutely true. I mean, the cross currencies, every single one hasn't got a 2.5% or 2.74, whatever it is, interest rate. So of course you're going to buy dollars. It's simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know. That's what I mean. I cannot get my head around it.
Well, let's have a look at the news for the week as well, mate. Have you looked at that already?
I did. There's none. Well,
Okay.
Week, sorry. Hang on. We've got 30-minute candles.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Let's have a look. Yeah.
And see if there's anything to trade. Sorry, I'm banging on about that. But
no, it's fair. It's you know, they're all fair questions, aren't they?
Well, it just makes no sense to me. When it makes no sense to me, I've got to bang on until I actually get an answer. Okay. This is the Aussie. Gee, this is strong resistance here. Absolutely. Let me put this into perspective for you. Horizontal level. A couple of trend lines. Channel, ascending channel. This has got to be not a buy for me, as I said before. I can't buy into this. Not saying it can't go long. Sorry, pardon me. I'm not saying it can't go long, not at all. But the only thing I see here short term, as in intraday, is back to these pivots. So that's what I'll be looking for. Put that into here, 30-minute chart. Yes, I've got all the confluence I need. Got a tweezer top. I've got a lower high. That was probably tradable a couple of hours ago. I don't trade at that time. If I get another opportunity, look, there's a wonderful gap down here. There's your first support level. If I can get in around here somewhere, I think this is a good trade. Aussie short, but only short term. Get out here. Anything can happen after that. That's a close if I can get in. So any signal here that gets me short, I'm happy to take. Cable, it's a little bit different because that level that we are currently looking at, which is the monthly pivot, has not only been broken, it's been broken 2 or 3 times. Yes, it was resistance here in the most recent attempt to get through it. but I think they'll have another crack, and I think this area here is likely. Now, whether that happens in sequence, this one then that one, or that one then this one, is obviously the hardest part to fathom. I'd prefer to think that will go long and test these levels first and then come back off them. So that's what I'll be looking for today. Whether it's got time to actually achieve that is probably another question, but I'll be thinking break to here, find this level, consolidate, get back underneath it, and short. I think we're talking way too long a time period. So that's going to be in the US session, which doesn't exist today because they're on a bank holiday. Of course, there'll be retail traders about, but very difficult to trust that. So I probably won't be trading cable today unless it hits these pivots. Then I'll look for a long. Euro, nothing there yet. Again, same. You know, until these pivots are tested, it's very tough to go long. Some would say they've been tested already. I think that's not the case in the weekly pivot, because the weekly pivots actually come to the price rather than the reverse. So daily pivot not yet tested. Can't go long until something happens here in terms of a test of either that one or that one. That's really the three majors that I'm looking at, mate. Let's go back to Euro Pound because we've spoken about that so much. And wow, what a mess. Let me go back to the analysis. And the analysis is that we've got a massive double rejection of the monthly pivot. We've now got a gap down that's closed fairly quickly. Look, maybe even that's an entry there, just underneath this current daily candle. It's a good back test of this trend line, which is pretty sharp, I must admit. Gee, I'm looking for something here.
Is it one of those things that we think that ultimately this is going to clear up and we are going to actually see the picture kind of unfold clearly enough eventually?
Yeah, and today's not that day because of the US bank holiday. It's really tough to be saying, okay, today's the day, because the big money's not going to be there later. The big money won't be around. Oh, I've got to see these pivots tested. That's the issue. Well, it's not an issue. Maybe it just keeps me safe. Maybe I'll just follow the rules. And the rules say I've got to see these pivots tested. If I can trade it to there, would I? Well, why not? Heck, why not? I've got, have I got a reversal? Maybe not. No, I'm not going to make a call on it today. It's too hard. It's messy. We've had a gap close. Tend to think that that's going to find that resistance and fall away, but I've got untested daily pivots. That's like an electromagnet to price, really, and I can't trade away from them. So no, going to leave it alone. What did you have, mate? Sorry, I didn't get any audible.
No, that's okay, mate. Do you know, all I was going to mention was the FTSE is now broken the daily pivot. It's not quite at my entry, but it's not too far away now. It's around about 15 or so pips away from the entry. It needs to get through this level here, which is a little bit frustrating, because that is actually going to be an entry that I could have taken later. However, I wouldn't mind seeing this breakdown and then bounce from the weekly pivot, and then see if there is an entry up here, possibly giving us a left shoulder, a header, and a right shoulder. But the fact that it is just price is just below this daily pivot is much more positive. Now, if we bring this on to looking at some shorter term time frames, then the 15-minute chart is probably the next best, just for here, because it's just broken out of this particular level here, retested it at this particular point, and it just started to fall away just a little bit. So there was probably one more opportunity there, which is about 34 pips higher than my entry was, which is a little frustrating, but not problematic in the grand scheme of things. But what it does mean that if there are any listeners out there that want to get involved in this, then you will have an opportunity, because it needs to get through this this trend line. And if it does get through this trend line, what's likely to happen then, I would suspect, is that we would start to break this channel down here. And this channel is now, it depends on when it happens, but let's say the measured move on this channel is to happen in the next hour or two. Maybe even taking us back to that weekly pivot, sorry, the daily pivot. Maybe it bounces back up, and that leads us down to this point. Now, it's not going to be exact here, but then when we kind of come into a 4-hourly chart here, then we do see another trend line that needs to give way, and that's this one. And that leads us somewhere in this area. It's not going to be, as I say, exact, but it's going to be somewhere in this area. So at this stage, I'm kind of aiming for around about 710 on the futures. So that will give a little bit of profit to get us started. But obviously, I want this one to break down a bit more significantly. So the question of whether I hold on is going to be shouting at me if we do start to break down. So I'll look for it to break this particular channel. If it breaks that particular channel, I'll look for the next point, the next channel. And if it comes down to that particular point, then I'll reassess and see whether I either just want to take profit or look for a bounce and then re-enter again, or whether I'm quite happy holding on to this one because it looks heavy enough to weaken. But the lack of liquidity out there just looks like we're going to get more of a bearish day than a bullish day at this particular stage, or certainly a bearish session to start us off with. Now, without the US coming on board, then the FTSE really is going to take the lead for the whole day. So the fact that we've started weaker does, it kind of fills me with a lot more hope. So anybody interested in trading the FTSE, then I think the short opportunity is definitely there. It just depends whether you want to play the breakdown to the weekly pivot and bounce and then enter, whether you're happy to trade under the daily pivot, whether you want to just wait until we break down this channel here and look for a much deeper dip, or what. There's many different ways to play this. You might even be looking for upside, which means that you look for a bounce here or a bounce down here. So there are a few points of interest along the FTSE 100, but that's pretty much it. All I've got to do right now is just wait and see how this picture unfolds, mate. So there's a trade in the market. I don't really have much more to give than that. I don't think there are any questions in the questions box, so I'm kind of I'm happy to close it up early for the day, rather than scrabbling around to try and find something to trade. I think we come back tomorrow with the market genuinely open and really kind of go at it. But for today, the plan is just to hold on to what I've got, which is a short on the FTSE.
Happy days, mate. Nothing wrong with that. I see pretty much absolute potential carnage here, because we're at absolutely strategic levels on the 3 crosses that I'm talking about. But that said, I think there's probably some traps there as well, because I'm talking short before long, I'm talking long before short. I really need to wait this out until those short before longs manifest, or the longs before short manifest. And today's just not the day to take those on board because of no US market. So I think it's probably wise to come back tomorrow myself and talk about what might have been, rather than, oh shit, what did I do wrong? If it's going to be like.
That sounds good. Okay, Ben, as well. Thanks, buddy. Let's talk tomorrow. There was something that we can mention, but let's talk tomorrow, because that still needs to unfold anyway. And we will look at the euro yen as a daily wave rider to see how. In fact, let's have a quick look at the daily wave rider right now. Yeah, and it was only because it was it's the daily wave rider, and it is the
looks great strategy. Why not talk about it?
Yes, well, absolutely. And the Daily Wave Rider on this Euro Yen specifically was the one that I was interested in, and I'll look for some others for everybody. Where is it? Where are you, Euro Yen? And we were looking for downside.
Last week we had a little long set up there, and I didn't want to trade it, and nothing's happened really. Has still in the same spot.
Yeah, no, I can't. Let me just see if I can find it. Just scrolling through Euro Pound. Here we go. Euro Yen. Okay, now the Daily Wave Rider. Obviously, I need a daily chart. This was the entry here. We were talking about that as an entry, or maybe even this. Now, I have to say, for me, this Daily Wave Rider would be all over now. And the reason it would be all over, let me see if I can make these bars better. I can't. Why can't I make those bars better? I'm just going to make them easier to look at here. No, okay. I can't do a lot with this, so I'm going to have to just do this. The reason for me that this would no longer be valid is because of Friday's bar. Friday's bar is a whole bar, and if anything, that would start to bring the balls back into play. So this is not going to be overrun at this stage. So the entry would have been off the first bar, and I'd be coming out pretty much at break even, and I would have come out as soon as today opened up. So even if the entries are off this bar, I'd be coming out. I'd want this to unfold and start to waterfall. Now that doesn't mean that this isn't still valid. We still have the super trend in red, and we do have a weekly pivot step down as well. I'm not sure where the weekly pivot is so far this week. I'd have to say it might even be slightly hasn't moved. Okay, so if it hasn't moved, then it's still valid, but we're really waiting for a picture to further unfold. And this is just, I'm not saying this is the way to trade the Daily Wave Rider with the normal set of rules. I'm sure PH would just hold on to this, and you know, you wouldn't be taken out right now, but my personal preference would be to close the trade and wait for the picture to unfold a little bit clearer, and see if as time goes on, this gives another reversal bar up here, and then re-enter, because you know the little bit of money that would be lost on this, which is going to be probably no more than maybe a third of a percent, maybe even a quarter of 1%, it will be gained by being safe on this, and then with a re-entry. So that quarter of a percent will be easily made back. So that's just something that I was going to cover very, very briefly, and we will see how that unfolds. But it needs to really kind of give us another clear signal before I'd be interested in trading that properly.
Yeah, I guess the question I would ask, not being a trend trader, but I recognize a trend when I see a trend. That's really not a trend, is it?
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Yeah, it's just kind of got a bit sloppy, isn't it now?
Yeah. So yeah, we're talking breakouts now, and
yeah,
I remember when we were talking about this. I don't know, it was Wednesday or Thursday. I said, yeah, the only trade I would like to take there is long.
Yes. I remember. Yeah.
On the back of that candle, it must have been Wednesday, because the candle I would have traded, if I would have traded it, and I had a good look at it, would have been the first of the high test bars.
Yes. I remember that. Well, let's come and have a look tomorrow anyway, mate. As Ben says, TTR starts in an hour, so we'll be back in a short period anyway. It's actually 45 minutes now, so we'll be back in a short period. But for right now, guys, let's join you back tomorrow, and we'll get some updates on some of this stuff. But we are in a trade on the FTSE 100 short, and we will see how that one goes. So if you're in that with me, then I will be holding this for short overnight, so this will still be valid tomorrow.
Happy days.
Okay, see you soon, guys. See you shortly, Jeff.
Yes, mate. Sorry, guys. Boring trading day, but that's to be expected on the US bank holiday. We'll see if we can sort it out tomorrow.
Yeah. See you then, guys. Have a good one.